So, just a very brief introduction to the Iberdrola Group, which is Scottish Power as part of that group. We're fifth largest utility in the world, about 46 gigawatts of generation across 20 countries, the number one onshore wind renewables developer with 13.5 gigawatts in operation. Can you hear me okay, yeah? Yeah. Our key focus, although we operate in 20 countries, our key focus is actually really across Spain, the United States of America, Mexico, Brazil, and of course the United Kingdom. In the UK, most of you will be familiar with us under the name of Scottish Power. In the UK, we're operating about 1.2 gigawatts of onshore wind. We've got a further gigawatt in the pipeline, about 10 gigawatts of offshore wind. We're in the process just now of building our first £1.6 billion offshore wind farm in the UK. We have 2.5 gigawatts of coal, a couple of gigawatts of gas, 3 consented stations. We are in a JV to look at the development of nuclear power, and we have a networks business that connects about 3.5 million homes. The reason for telling you all of that is really just to set the scene from the point of view we view ourselves as very much being at the centre of the process around decarbonising the UK's energy system and looking at maintaining security of supply in the UK going forward. I think one of the things, just to, again, setting a little bit of context, you go around a lot of conferences, pick up newspapers, it's very easy to get the impression that the UK energy system is a basket case, that there's no investment, nobody's doing anything, the lights are going to go out. It's actually not that bad, I would say, I would hope. I think if you actually look at what's going on in the UK and been going on in the UK, in the period from 2007 to 2011, there was £43 billion invested in the UK energy sector. We've increased now from about 5 billion to 8 billion a year up to 2010, and the numbers continuing to rise. We're investing about 12% of the total turnover from the energy sector back into the UK. So it is actually quite an attractive market. It is working reasonably well. And what the process about now and for the future is, how do we improve that? How do we make it better? How do we make it faster? How do we increase the quantum? From our perspective as a group, we view the UK very positively. Our view to now is that we would like to spend about 42% of the group's capital in the UK. That's about, in the period to 2014, that's about £3.5 billion looking at investing into the UK. So again, we view this as a very attractive, very open market. Why? Because it's got relatively stable political and regulatory frameworks. Processes like Rio T1, the Rio ED1 process that's going on just now, the renewables obligation, all good, solid, stable frameworks, give us long-term certainty, give us a sensible rate of return, and that's what we're looking for as an investor. And again, what we're now looking for in terms of the EMR is, how do you carry that process on? How do you improve that? How do you make that better for the future? That moves us on, inevitably, to talk about the EMR and what's happening with that. I think at its highest level, it has a big objective, which is to deliver the future of UK energy investment, to improve that, to increase it. Our view to now is that the key pillars that have been put in place look sensible, they look good, the milestones look realistic. We're very hopeful that we end up with a capacity mechanism that is going to deliver market-wide investment in new and also keep on existing plant on the system. The contracts for difference looks like a sensible mechanism to carry on investment in decarbonising the UK system. The emissions performance standard looks like it will allow gas to carry on playing an important part in the future thermal generation in the UK. Carbon floor price, that's the one area we do have a little bit of difficulty with. Our view is, because of the way it's been structured and set up, it is very much a tax. It's not very bankable. We don't think it does a great deal to help future investment in the UK and in the thermal sector. Capacity mechanism. What we have right now in the UK, really for the first time, is a serious programme of shutting down generation stations in relatively large amounts and large quantities across the UK. We have a lack of investment coming through in building new thermal generation at this point in time. Lots of plans, lots of talk, but not a lot of actual investment. And therefore, what you're hearing is an awful lot of talk about security of supply and people questioning security of supply in terms of the short, medium, long-term future for the United Kingdom. Probably the best way to describe that, or one of the best ways to describe it, is use a real example. Picture up there is Kikenzie Power Station. We own it, 1,200 megawatt coal plant. Last Friday we shut it down. We didn't mothball it. We've not shrink wrapped it. We're not bringing it back. It's shut. Next week we're going to start dismantling it. And that is what's going on now. Really, for the first time, seriously in the UK, we are closing stations like that. And we're going to be closing a whole programme of them over the next few years across the United Kingdom. They can't be brought back. They're not coming back. They're not going to be used again. They're being shut down. We're currently sitting with 3 consented sites to build new gas stations in the UK, and we're not doing anything with them just now. We've got a planning consent, but there is absolutely no economic signal for us to do anything in terms of investing money in the future build of those sites at this point in time. So what are we going to do? Right now, we're going to sit and wait. And that's the problem the UK's got. And if we all sit and wait, what happens? This is what happens. That's the prediction just now for the future generation margin for the UK. The plant shuts, the generation margin gets squeezed, nobody builds new plant, the generation margin falls. Most people think once it falls to 5, 4, 3%, that's when you've got a real issue in the UK for security of supply. The debate that's actually going on just now isn't about whether that will happen. That will happen. That is happening right now, today. The debate is about when does it get down to 3%? Is it in 2015, 2016, 2017? And that's where it just depends on whose numbers do you use, who do you believe. But it will happen, and it's happening right now. So what's the EMR about? What's the capacity mechanism about? The capacity mechanism is really about how is it we manage properly that transition from coal to gas. How do we get rid of that volatility that exists? How do we get rid of the uncertainty that exists? That's why we need a capacity mechanism to help us transfer and make a smooth transition from coal to gas. Okay. Again, the other important thing, looking at that graph, is that's what it's about. It's about moving from coal to gas. Everything you read and hear just now is about nuclear power. Everybody's obsessed about the process that's going on around the debate and the agreement for a new nuclear power station. What I would say to you is, if we delay that decision by 6 months or 12 months, what's going to happen? We'll have a new nuclear power in 10 years, or 10 years, 6 months, or 11 years. If we get the capacity mechanism wrong, if we delay it by 6 months, the lights go out. That's what the focus needs to be on just now for the UK. It's got to be on sorting the capacity mechanism. How do we do that? What's the focus for us? It's actually about keeping it simple. Once you get into the detail, it becomes very, very complicated. The more complicated it becomes, the more difficult it becomes to implement it. And the more difficult it becomes to manage it and actually get the investment coming forward. Our view very much is, let's make it as efficient as possible. Apply it to all plant, not just new plant, but existing plant. You need to maximize the use of the existing plant in the system as well. Strip out the complexity. The more complexity you put into it, the more you put penalty clauses into it, the more expensive it becomes, and it actually creates volatility. The very thing you're trying to get rid of from the marketplace right now, you will create if you make this too complex. And make sure you stick to the original principle of what it's for. It's about long-term investment in generation. It's about creating long-term certainty. Don't use a capacity mechanism to manage short-term network and generation issues. Don't use it to manage the system. It's about using it to manage a case to create a long-term investment profile. In terms of the CFD, don't worry, I'm not even going to try and explain that diagram to you. That diagram really serves one purpose. When we first talked about bringing a CFD to the market, the idea was to replace the RO with something that was more simplistic, easier to understand, was going to attract more investment into the UK, and it was going to bring down the cost of capital. And I think we're in danger of losing sight of that objective. I think we're in danger of what some people might describe as buckaroo politics. We just keep adding bits onto it, another bit, and eventually it's going to go pop. Or my brain's going to go pop because you can't understand it anymore. We need to keep it simple. Our view, very much, focus on three things. Number one, transparency. The process of setting the strike prices has to be transparent. Investors need to understand how it's being done. We need to see the evidence behind it. We need to see that the process is robust. Number one, risk. Temptation always in these negotiations, push all the risk back on the investors and the generators and the developers. All you'll do is increase the cost. The more risk you push back to us, the more the cost goes up and the more we'll want out of a strike price. Third one, the allocation of the contracts. Make it clear, make it transparent, make it very, very predictable. If there's any doubt over the allocation of a contract and when your contract is secure, you will just slow down the investment. And that's our view of what we need to do with the CFD. The transition to CFDs, again, right now we have the RO. There's lots of investment coming through the RO. We're putting lots of investment into the UK on the back of the renewables obligation right now. So our view is we need to be very, very careful as we move from the RO to CFDs. We need to make sure that transition is as smooth as possible. When the strike prices come out for the CFDs, they're going to need to look and feel as if they're at the same level as the RO. Otherwise, investors will immediately read into this, that's a policy change. That's a commitment change. That's a shift away from wanting to carry on building renewable projects. You need to make that transition smooth. The other thing right now is there's a continuing review going on of the RO. Despite the process we went through a year ago to reset the RO levels, particularly for onshore wind, we're back into another review. And everything we see, all of the evidence we've seen says absolutely no need to review it again. And again, where we see and investors see what they think are political-driven reviews, political-driven reviews of the RO or of a strike price, it creates uncertainty, and we need to remove that from the system. Final comments. Really, the final comment is really summed up by the last line on the slide. It's absolutely essential that we deliver this as quickly as possible, that we remove complexity from it, that we focus on the key areas that investors need to see, and that we hit the timescales, because that is what will deliver the investment. Thank you.